Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, we're talking a little bit about food service trends as we think ahead to this summer for the food service conference for the International Fresh Produce Association. Fascinating report we got this week from Acosta. I can't remember, the why behind the dine, and it's research through their shopper community. And it kind of shows some bummer news for the food service industry.
I don't suppose it would be shocking because we know that inflation is affecting everyone and everything, and especially food. And it's definitely affecting the restaurant industry. The survey said 54% of consumers are eating out less often, and 1 in 3 are spending less when they do eat out. There's still some good news in there, though, as all these restaurants are recovering from pandemic restrictions.
Well, yeah, I think that there is some good news in there. And I think as you dig into we run the press release or whatever, and always encourage people to dig a little further into what's going on with this. And I looked at the report itself, and the top reasons for dining out obviously are relevant for retailers too. The number one reason is very relatable. It is lack of motivation to cook. And I think retail is doing the best it can. And you shop primarily at Aldi, but if you look at other stores, everyone's trying to come up with quick, easy, and affordable. And it's really hard to get the intersection of all three of those together. But when consumers can find it, that is really important. And actually, one of the other reasons is no time to cook. That actually rose 13 points since last year in this survey. And I think consumers are getting a lot busier than they were 2 years ago and even a year ago. They're getting out more. And that no time to cook thing is, I think, strongly related to lack of motivation to cook because you got to do it quick. But those are all things that everyone is trying to solve, and retail is trying to nail that one as well.
It was interesting, the variance in the different kinds of restaurants. While quality still remains the top priority for people eating out, price has gone up to number 2. And I think it wouldn't shock me if that goes even higher. People still obviously value quality, but price is a big deal, and higher price restaurants, I mean, they're really in the crosshairs. They've really got to deliver something extraordinary to go against this trend.
I think if I were to, put a pin on what growth we're going to see in areas of growth for the food service industry, they are definitely going to be in those models where consumers perceive value, or they're finding ways to do things with a lower overhead cost. And the one that you pointed to with meal price being number 2 in importance was quick serve. And quick serve has been doing great during the pandemic. A lot of people are turning to quick serve because it usually is a lower cost meal, but also there's no service, there's no labor cost involved with having a server. There's typically not tipping, although adding tipping even at counter service has been coming very common. But
I'm doing all the work. Why am I doing the tipping?
Because they aren't paying the people very well. And oftentimes the restaurant operators, maybe say tips are part of your compensation package there, which, is not true. But to see that the growth in those, we've talked about this before, especially as the summer gets rolling, low overhead things like ghost kitchens and food trucks, restaurants that are automating as much as they can, automating the ordering systems, automating, the flow in the kitchen, trying to get things dialed down to as efficient as possible, taking out the fixed costs of things, including labor. Those restaurants are, I think, poised to have a really strong summer. I think high-end restaurants are going to have a hard time of it, except for super high-end customers who are perhaps less cost conscious. But that's not everyone, and that's not the
That's a
majority
very
of
small
diners.
number. Very,
Very small number. So I think this report is really fascinating to dig into. It's linked on our site, to think about just some data points of what's going on with dining and how inflation is affecting it. And then we had another story.
well,
this
before
week.
we go to that, one of the things reading this report that made me feel a parallel is, you've been working from home for over a decade. So when the pandemic hit, it was no different for you, and I have for 4 years now. So that was no change. So we were both ahead of the curve about what was going to happen. And I read this report and I thought one of the places that my family dines out, and it's not exactly dining out, it's when we don't want to cook. We get take and bake pizzas,
Right.
and that cuts our thinking about menu planning, doing a lot of the labor, but I'm still going to pick it up and I'm still getting something that is far superior than I could cook on my own. But the price point is about half the price of a delivered hot pizza. And so I feel like this trend is people are realizing things have changed with inflation, and like I was already ahead of this curve.
Yeah, I actually saw a lady today at Costco. I stopped by to get some water balloons. And I saw a lady with at least a dozen take and bakes stacked up in her cart. And I'm like, oh, they're having a party, but wouldn't it be a pain to take and bake 10 pizzas? But anyway, I digress
You
on
can't
that.
do two at a time.
Well, if your oven's big enough, for sure, but not a
You're
Costco.
not, well, at least the ones I get, it's
Right.
screwed up if you do more than one at the same time.
Right. So, I mean, but the another stat in the report also talked about delivery versus pickup, and pickup is just skyrocketing, and that's happening in grocery as well because it's not sustainable to do delivery. Food typically doesn't taste as great when there's delivery. So pickup is kind of a bridge between that in-restaurant dining experience and the home dining experience. I think we've moved past a lot of the frenzy and the franticness of restaurant operators to try to optimize as much as they can for an out of restaurant dining experience. Remember, we had a lot of people who were not accustomed to takeout, really doing a lot of menu research and trying to make it better. Restaurants are still concerned about that, but I think we've moved past, with all this 2 years of this, there's a certain standard lowering of what you expect your food to taste like when you take it home versus eating it in. Yeah, and look like, yeah, it's definitely, the plating is gone.
Yeah. Well, also, we're seeing in all these consumer surveys that, a year ago, people were really concerned about the pandemic and being around people. And now, like, that's completely gone. Almost every survey we're seeing. So we're getting at least to a normal level of consumer behavior that looks like it's sticking around. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. It's going to be lifestyle changes, inflationary, and those will be here for a while. So these adjustments that the industry is going to make are not temporary adjustments like the temporary adjustments during the pandemic.
Right. And there's a certain number of people who switch their behavior over to takeout and are takeout, that they are big fans of it, and they're going to continue that behavior. And then there's a certain number of people who are ready to go back into restaurants. And we're going to see in the next story I was going to just quickly reference was that one with the 10 cities that are going to actually have huge events, and their industries are getting ready for a rockin' summer as far as in-person things are going. Seattle was one of them. Chicago was one of them. So take a look at that to see where this one index predicts there are going to be the most opportunities for spending, retail and food service, and hotels, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. They are expecting a roaring 20s kind of summer.
Oh yeah, if you think about our industry, all the events are back. Most industries are that way, and just think about entertainment. I mean, have you seen your local concert calendar for this summer? Ours is ridiculous. It's like something huge every week because they got postponed, and
Right.
now people are ready to see it. And I mean, all the sports are back. It's like there's an overload of things to do, all on top of the fact that everything costs more, so people have less discretionary spending.
I think a lot of us are just going, well, you know what? I haven't spent that money in the last 2 years, so maybe my pent up demand is just making me forget about my finances for a little while.
Yeah, we got to get back to living. We'll get back to paying for it later.
That's American way, isn't it?
It is.
Another story that we had this just briefly is we're seeing a lot of recalls come in, and produce is becoming roped into the peanut butter recall with Jif's Kentucky operations salmonella find, and we've had 3 or 4, maybe 5 different recalls come through. And just a reminder to check your Jif. I think we both had some Jif. Some of the snack packs and things like that that were sold with a little cup of peanut butter had some of the lots that were involved with it. And I've made my adjustment to Texas peanut butter, so I'm safe. But
I looked into the recall myself and found that mine was not produced at that plant. So we're going to keep eating out of this one with a spoon.
I think my kids already took care of that.
That's to the point where you got to give it to the dog.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's probably like sniffing peanut butter over there, like, hey.
I'll take care of that.
All right, well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter twice a day, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
And happy Memorial Day, the start of summer.
Yep, let's get rocking and rolling with all these events.
That's right. Starting with this weekend.
I'll be at the beach this weekend.
I'll be at a 500-mile race.
All right.